Hey everyone, this is Shreyas.
Hi guys, this is Anusha.
So today we're going to record our first episode of The Political Patient, and we're going to focus on something that recently happened in the news. Uh, it was said that Biden opened up a new, or President Biden opened up a new migrant facility at the border, and there seemed to be some public health implications on this. So essentially, what the press secretary Jen Psaki is saying is that they have opened this new migrant facility in an attempt to for the children that are being kept per se in this migrant facility so that they follow social distancing protocols and so they have more access to like different resources and things like that. However, this is I guess angered almost both sides as just simply reversing or simply doing something that the Trump administration was um, given a lot of attention for it in something that they shouldn't have done because they reactivated this. This was closed down, but now it's opened again. So we just wanted to come on and provide our thoughts for a few minutes.
Yeah, so this situation can certainly get a little tricky. My feelings on this are certainly a little mixed. I personally did not want the Biden administration to go back into one of these border towns like Carrizo Springs in Texas and reopen facilities when they ran on a campaign of doing the exact opposite. But at the same time, the reasoning given in that they want to make sure that the children are appropriately social distanced during a pandemic and the fact that they simply can't release them to the public without having proper sponsors and just general concerns about their health being followed. I think that it's a okay, emphasis on okay, short-term solution, but not necessarily one that the Biden administration should continue for a long-term like solution to this problem.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know what
agree.
your view is.
I think basically like it makes sense as to what they're doing in the sense of like their rationale or its supposed rationale, at least like what's publicly announced.
Mhm.
Um, Again, it should not be a long-term solution. This is, I mean, hopefully COVID-19 itself isn't a long-term factor, but
Yeah.
supposedly, like if it does last for a little bit more time than we want, this shouldn't be a long-term solution. I can see why they had to do this, especially because, I mean, I've been reading in other places that are own like migrant facilities, or I guess people are saying that this was referred to as like cages in the past as well in Trump's administration. Like the rhetoric has changed, so we're referring to the same thing. Um, but these migrant facilities that they're the only reason that this has been reactivated is because of like it was essentially like just to abide by COVID-19 guidelines like presented by the CDC and things like that. But yeah, we should not keep doing this, especially given like the immigration platform that President Biden ran under, or then Vice President, um, potential President Biden. Um, and yeah, and what's been very interesting is the way that the media has portrayed this, but more so how it's angered almost both sides. So correct me if I'm wrong, Anusha, but basically a lot of the people who are more left leaning per se, they've been saying that this is um, not the right step. Like we're essentially like however, no matter how you boil it down, like basically means that they've opened another migrant facility. And people who are typically leaning more towards the right, they've been angered because they've called Biden's administration hypocritical because basically the Trump administration was shamed per se for doing a very similar thing in a way, in the sense of like having another migrant facility. So do you think essentially that's the gist in the sense of how people are reacting to this?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, a lot of progressive leaders in like the progressive like wing of the Democratic Party, like of course AOC, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, what came out with a very I guess well attention to tweet. Like it received a lot of likes and replies, and people basically called her out also on not perhaps reading the facts, for being hypocritical, but she essentially criticized the Biden administration's um move on this. And as you said, people on the right, particularly those who supported the Trump administration's moves in the past, but not just them, also more moderate per se, right-leaning folks have also said that this is very hypocritical, and it completely runs like it's a complete antithesis to what Biden said he would do. Um, it's a very complicated issue. I think, like we said, it's an okay short-term solution, but I think people are right to call the Biden administration out on this, for lack of better words, because we don't want this to evolve into just kind of a long-term solution to a horrific problem that's just kind of hidden from the public eye, because now it's a Democrat doing it after 4 years of Republican that was largely vilified by both the media and by left-leaning people.
Yeah, and again, we don't want to necessarily come on here and like present our own specific opinions in terms of like our ideologies, like liberal or conservative, things like that. Like just the fact of the matter is like this is different. Even like I'm not trying to be hypocritical or anything. This is different from what the Trump administration was attempting to do. Like the Biden administration's focus is they're not separating more children per se from families. They're simply opening another one for almost, I guess, social distancing protocol, and also because it does take some time to vet, like for families that would be able to, I guess, raise these unfortunately separated children.
Mhm.
Hopefully, I think what we can do is wait for more policies as like to figure out where Biden's administration kind of falls on this. Like, are they, I guess, lowering the amount of separations that are happening? What more so is the situation at the border? And only time will tell. I mean, again, something to consider is it hasn't really been a while since
Yeah.
President Biden assumed office or was inaugurated per se. But again, I can completely see where both sides are coming from this. I do think it's more complex than how it may appear. What Anusha and I were talking about before, and we do want to mention now, is we strongly encourage people to read the whole article. If they do decide to read an article, or if they're going to watch a video, watch all of the video. Do not just read the headlines or watch like a couple seconds of it. Almost, it is more complicated. If you just read the title, it may seem like President Biden opened up a new migrant facility, period. You might be like, that's literally what the people were angry about that the Trump administration was doing. But if you read a little bit more about it, it's they opened it because of a certain like, public health, global health, disease related reason. But again, I think they could have done something a little differently. And if this is something they want to do, as we've emphasized several times, it should be a short-term temporary solution. They should go away from this. But this is what's been in the news very recently, I think, right? A few days ago.
Yeah, it's been just a day, I believe, that this really just kind of rocketed into the news.
Yeah, and I did want to ask you. So, Anusha, you're from Texas. I am not. Um, I was wondering how you feel in the sense of like as a Texan, almost like being at a border state. I'm not from a border state. How like what you feel about this? Like not necessarily like your ideology, but just kind of how you're responding to this, and almost like in a way how your state is sort of responding to this.
Yeah, so I want to clarify that I am actually from North Texas, and like Texas is a very large state, and I think it's worth making that clarification that I'm not from any of the border towns in South Texas. I am much closer to the Dallas-Fort Worth complex than most people in South Texas ever will be. So I think first I wanted to say that, but I think it's very complicated for Texans seeing this. As you know, Texas did go Republican in the 2020 election. That doesn't necessarily mean that all the people who voted red are now sitting here and lambasting the Biden administration for this, nor do they all support the Trump administration's previous policies in this matter. I think that the issue of border control immigration is particularly fraught for people who live on the borders. It's very easy, I think, for people to criticize and criticize, but not live the reality. And I think people have a very valid opinion when, especially Texas was just hit by a massive winter storm. And now the Biden administration might be doing more for migrant facilities. And in some people's eyes, not mine, but in some people's eyes, it might be seen as just the wrong move in the wrong time. And for a state that's already been so contentious over this issue, I think it's just going to fan the flames more. Like I said, I think more people are preoccupied with the recovery from the winter storm than they are with this.
Mhm.
I personally don't know what Carrizo Springs, like that city in Texas, is doing right now. But I do know that it is a very, very controversial issue there. And I'm not sure what their thoughts on the Biden administration's opening of these new facilities are. But from what I understand, at least not from a Texas standpoint, just from like reading the news and the facts, it seems that these facilities are not just cages. I've seen, I think, a couple of pictures. I'm not sure if you saw them, Shreyas, but I think there's an NPR article that highlighted that they have bunk beds and they have access to sporting facilities, which should be the bare minimum for teenagers who are living through a very tough time. And it's not as good as living in our houses as both of us are. But I think that again, the issue is much more complex than we give it credit for, and reading the headlines and just kind of coming to a conclusion is not going to help anybody.
Yeah, and something that you did mention too is like they are supposedly, I mean, we have not been to one of these facilities to see for
Yeah.
ourselves, but supposedly providing educational resources, and like the whole reason they kind of opened the new facilities because they are like getting beds and stuff, and the beds have to be like somewhat distant from each other. Well, one, because of privacy, but also social
Because
distancing
of the
protocol.
virus, yes.
So yeah, so I think, I don't know, it's definitely, I am like, I myself am very conflicted on this, and I can only imagine that the country is pretty conflicted. And you also did mention that Texas is currently dealing with the aftermath of a storm.
Mhm.
So I hope that y'all are doing better. And I know it's going to be a long path, especially seeing how like some of the infrastructure has been impacted. It's not gonna Pipes are not gonna be rebuilt overnight, for example, or houses are not gonna be rebuilt overnight. So
Mhm.
I wish the state the best of luck, and I know the whole country is here to help.
Thank you so much. But I think also when you mentioned the winter storm, it makes me also think about these children and people, not just homeless people on the streets, but these children who, while some might see as not being left behind, even being treated better than the average Texan is, that's one point of view. The other point of view is that they were probably hit extremely hard by the storm. Like current facilities might be holding them, might be severely underfunded, and are now just a bottom priority because the way it goes is you first help a United States citizen before you do a migrant, which I personally am not on board with at all. I think a human life is a life, and especially if it's a child. I think that all children are equal in that matter. I don't know anybody else who has a different opinion to that. But yeah, it's a very tense issue that's only made worse by the fact that there are millions of Texans without power and water still.
Yeah, I was just going to say, honestly, like it completely, like until you mentioned it, I didn't even consider it. But like, yeah, how were their resources? Like, I know a lot of people in Texas, like with like, I don't want to say good homes or something like that, but like socioeconomically advantaged. Is that the word?
Yeah,
Something like
no,
that.
exactly.
Like, I know they were struggling with like heat and having to like possibly like boil their water because like, or like boil the snow and things like that. I've been reading. I mean,
Oh
I don't,
yeah.
like, it's
Yeah.
all over the place. So if they had to do that, and like some like very resource filled like locales were doing that, like I can only imagine what was going on in the migrant facilities. So I hope things are getting better. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've reiterated this a bunch of times, but make sure to do your research into these issues. And even after you do tons and tons of research, sometimes the answer isn't going to be crystal clear. Sometimes there isn't an answer that's just like, yeah, we should definitely do this, or no, we should definitely not do this. That is the unfortunate ill of many of these complex issues.
Yeah, some resources that we loved, if you wanted to look into it. I think Anusha mentioned NPR. NPR is covered this. Um, The View, the talk show. covered it. I personally love watching The View, but The View covered it. And if you want like direct information in the sense like what the Biden administration is talking about, the press secretary briefings are very good as well. I personally think Jen Psaki does a pretty good job explaining like what the rationale was, what they're kind of doing, and the press and the reporters do a very good job questioning and as well. So I would definitely recommend watching that. But anyways, that is kind of our end for this episode. We thank you all for watching, and we will have another one next month.
Bye, guys.